Today's video is sponsored by NordVPN.
This is the all-new Sigma 16-300mm F3.5-6.7 DC OS lens, and that right there is Donnerton Park. And what I'm going to do is pair this lens with my A6700 and introduce it to a little bit of racing. So this is one of those ultimate all-in-one zoom lenses where you have everything from a wide all the way to an extreme telephoto, and it's great for travel, it's great for sports, and it's really convenient. And we haven't really seen anything like this on mirrorless cameras in a good while, especially APS-C cameras. From the top of my head, I can't actually think of a single lens that offers this kind of focal length. But whilst it's versatile, it has got me wondering, what are the trade-offs and the sacrifices with overall image quality and sharpness? Because typically with this kind of extreme focal range, that is something that is present in these kind of lenses, and we will discuss that later on in today's video after I've had some time to have a look at the photo and videos from today. Now, just before we get on to talking about this lens's build quality, for those curious, the racing event that I'm attending today is Donington Historic Festival, and there is a whole toy box of cars here. I'm talking Ferraris, Lambos, Porsches, Bugattis, and there are even some Formula 1 cars here. I mean, is there anywhere better to try out and test out a new lens? I don't think so.
Now, just before we start talking more about this lens, a quick message from today's sponsor, NordVPN. For those unfamiliar, a VPN is a virtual private network. If you jump onto any public Wi-Fi like at an airport or a cafe, your data could be intercepted by malicious third parties who are setting up fake networks to give you internet access in exchange for your data. They can see your browsing history, password entries, and payment method. Not to mention, they can also change some of your sensitive data. And with our dependency online increasing every day, we need our data to be protected. This is where NordVPN comes in. It's a simple yet affordable way to encrypt your traffic and protect your data across all devices. Plus, it blocks trackers and protects you from malware. Not only does it protect your data, but if you choose a different location in the NordVPN app, you can have access to content that is usually regionally locked, meaning you can get access to different content from streaming services from different countries, or get your local content when you're traveling abroad. So secure your data today with NordVPN. Type in the link on screen or click it in the description, and if you use that link, you can get a huge discount with the purchase of a 2-year plan, which also comes with 4 extra months for free. So the first thing we should talk about with this lens is the size and weight. So in terms of the size, it is 123mm, which is just shy of 5 inches. And if you ask me, that is quite big, and please, no jokes, I've seen the temptation. I nearly made a few jokes myself, but decided to be mature for once. But yeah, there are plenty of jokes there, so make your own and have some fun. The weight of this lens is a modest 615 grams, and for what this lens is offering in terms of focal range, I don't think that's bad at all. I'd also say it's a compact package. Now, when you're out at 300mm, the length does double in size, so you definitely want to keep a steady hand when you're shooting at these longer focal lengths, but this lens does come equipped with optical stabilization, which is a first from Sigma for an APS-C designed lens. So how it works, at the wide end you get 6 stops of stabilization, and at the telephoto end you get 4.5. This is fantastic, especially if you're going to be pairing it with something like the A6700, which already comes equipped with 5 stops of image stabilization. I can also say with 100% confidence from my time using this lens that in the hand it feels premium. It is constructed from high quality plastic and actually reminds me a lot of the Sigma 18-50, just a tad bigger. At the rear of the lens you'll find a weather sealing gasket, and this lens also features a dust and splash resistant structure. The front of the lens also houses a water repellent coating. So we can definitely see that Sigma is aiming this lens towards people who are going to be using it out in the field, potentially in less than ideal weathering conditions and shooting environments. And out of all the Sigma APS-C lenses available, still, this one definitely has the best build quality. When it comes to control switches, this lens features one, although it isn't anything too exciting. It is just a lock switch to prevent the barrel of the lens from creeping out. Speaking of the barrel though, the zoom ring on this lens is done for perfection for me when it comes to tightness when extending the zoom. Plus the throw of this lens isn't bad at all. I mean, look at this, 16-300, 16-300. That is the only wrist movement I need to go from the widest point of this lens to the longest. Again, I think that is done to perfection. So as we know, this lens does feature a variable aperture of f3.5 to f6.7. So at 16mm, the widest point of this lens, you are going to be at f3.5, which can give you some subject separation, but not too much. And at 300mm, you're going to be at f6.7. 300mm at 6.7 will give a nice amount of background separation, not just because of the aperture, but the compression as well. However, f6.7 isn't going to provide a really shallow depth of field, so if that is what you are looking for, then this lens might not be for you in many shooting scenarios. Now, I do actually want to put into context how insane and incredible this zoom range is. So on screen right now is a shot at 300mm, and I'm now going to zoom out to 16mm. And look at how far you can reach with this lens. That is actually bonkers. So from rigorous testing, the autofocus is one of the strongest aspects with this lens. When you pair it with something like the A6700, which features AI, it is incredible and pretty much unstoppable. A combo that will rival any native Sony lens. When focus locks onto a subject, you know it's going to stick there, and it does so silently. Another highlight with this lens, perhaps more surprising, is focus waving, or should I say their lack of. At any focal length from my testing, there was practically none, and that will definitely be a welcome attribute for video shooters. So now on to the moment of truth. Image quality. Is this lens sharp? Well, just before we discuss that in detail, I'd actually like to share with you some of the sample photos that I was able to capture with this lens at Donaton, so you can see for yourself what this lens is actually capable of. I will be honest, at first I wasn't expecting to be all that impressed with the image quality, but this lens delivered. Now don't get me wrong, it is not going to be as sharp as a zoom lens with a constant aperture like a 70-200 or a prime lens, but it's pretty good overall. At 16mm in the center, as you can see, it is tack sharp. It does fall off in the corners, which is repeated at all focal lengths, but the center always remains sharp. The only focal point where I do see a bigger drop in sharpness from the center is at 300mm, but still more than acceptable. Distortion is something you're naturally going to have to contend with this sort of focal range. So at the wide end, you're going to get some barrel distortion and a bit of pincushion distortion at the telephoto end. However, there isn't all that much. I would recommend leaving in-camera corrections on, as that will help both the barrel distortion and pincushioning, but I have to say, another area where this lens smashes it out of the park. A common foundation found with Sigma APS-C lenses is their minimum focus distance, and I wasn't expecting this, but this lens also has an incredible minimum focus distance. For my testing, you can literally touch your subject with the lens and still focus on it, meaning you can capture some pretty great basic macro photography. The only area where I do see this lens struggling slightly is with chromatic aberration, which is something I was honestly expecting. The lateral chromatic aberration is very good, very difficult to find even when you are pixel peeping. However, you may notice in some scenarios some longitude chromatic aberration. For my time testing at trackside, I didn't experience any content concerns with chromatic aberration, but this lens definitely does exhibit some, not a lot, in certain shooting scenarios. In terms of bokeh, expanding on what I mentioned earlier with aperture, you shouldn't really expect all that much from this lens. There is some cat eyeing in the corners and onion ringing, plus unless you are shooting at a longer focal length and at a distance to your subject, you won't really get much bokeh. So if your focus is something like portrait photography, this lens is definitely not for you. And that does bring us on to a really good question. Who is this lens for? Well, I see this lens being a great option for someone who wants to maximize convenience and have a single lens to capture nearly anything that comes their way. Plus, it is a fantastic lens for someone who wants to get into sports, motorsports, and wildlife photography without breaking the bank. Because this lens will set you back $699. Incredible value for a lens that effectively covers you from 24mm to 450mm on a full frame equivalent. Plus, you are getting something that has overall good image quality, a sturdy build, and is extremely compact and versatile. Overall, a very impressive lens from Sigma that will tick the boxes of many people who are looking for a versatile APS-C telephoto zoom lens. So that is my review of the Sigma 16-300mm lens. It would be great to hear your thoughts on this lens in the comment section below. And just before you go today, if you want to see a full buyer's guide to the APS-C Sigma lineup, then check out this video right here. And with all that said and done, until next time, create, explore, and inspire.